Good evening, wrestling fans, or actually, good morning, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of WrestleTalkShow. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, here to bring you the week in professional wrestling, or any other day we feel like recording, news, bits, rumors, ins and outs, anything and everything pro wrestling. And with WrestleMania 27 just days away, there's plenty of news to report, a lot of interesting stories, a lot of things to discuss, as well as some WrestleMania angles to go over before the event happens this Sunday on pay per view. I think the question we'll pose in the beginning and elaborate more and leave you with on the end is it did it for a lot of people this past Monday, but overall, will you order WrestleMania? And I think it's a very valid and viable question because I'd argue that up until this week, there wasn't much of a reason. Would you disagree? All this, ratings, news, bits, some fan email that we'll address and discuss, bits, rumors, ins and outs, all this and more on the next episode starting right now. And like we always do, let's start the episode off by thanking our audience. Without you, this would not be possible. I appreciate the feedback of any kind. Uh, Special shout out to Mr. Leonard Reed, who will address fan mail after the news bits. There's quite a bit of news before that, along with your ratings and everything like that. But special thanks to him and everyone else that goes to WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Interact with the online forum, post a question, respond to a question, uh, give your opinion on a question that's already up there. Send show related emails to cwecompany@gmail.com and view this as well as 90 plus other archived videos at youtube.com/cwecompany. But that's enough for the plugs at the moment. Let's get right. Thank you to you guys, and let's get right into your week of wrestling as it occurred. This past Monday Night Raw, going into WrestleMania, as we'll elaborate this whole episode, scored a 3.8 viewership rating. Not bad. Kind of what we wanted to see. Actually, kind of great. What we were expecting to see last week, but kind of got scared with the 3.3. I still don't think that gets him off the hook for the 3.3, considering it was 2 weeks until Mania and Dancing with the Stars did better than Monday Night Raw a week before its signature event. I don't. With the new format, I can go on, and I'll address it later, but I don't think. I think the last month's worth of videos kind of sum up my fears, and then this video will kind of. It's open forum where I'll take it and I'll break it down, but 3.3 2 weeks before your signature event that should really, really mean something above everything else, regardless of who's there. The event itself, in my opinion, was thrown together, but I'll elaborate. They did it well. It could have been done better. You could have seen more uh, time spent on builds and not such, let's throw this one here, and this one here and see what works, and gotten actual 6 month to a year, 3 to 6 month to a year storylines that you could have been following this whole time and casually segued into WrestleMania as it's kind of gone every year, and how we've argued that a storytelling process is more or less not rocket science. SmackDown on Sci-Fi stuck with its 2.0 for another week, so it's good to see that they're at least averaging that. So it's better than the 1.8 it was at one point. TNA Impact scored a 1.2, down from last week, but if you're TNA, kind of hard to say anything that hasn't already been said about them. If you're TNA, you're not real worried about it, I guess, considering where they came from, but that's a separate episode. Because it's something we'll segue into in a little bit. TNA, do you remember Awesome Kong? Do you? When times were good? When you were good? You remember? No, I didn't think so. WWE announcer Michael Cole is in hot water after posting on after a Twitter post directed at fellow commentator Josh Matthews, where Cole referred to Matthews as a faggot. That's something that I don't know about PW Torch, but I know Smart Wrestling Fan edited it for content. Viewer discretion is advised, by the way, if it's not already stressed. But for those of you that follow me, know that I kind of beat to my own drum. Gotta love YouTube. But yeah, quickly after that, Cole removed it and apologized for, did not mean any disrespect, and apologized for, quote, in a nutshell, he did not mean to offend the, quote, young Josh Matthews. So that moves on to this one, which was actually number 6 on the list, but I should have marked it as a segue. Right after this, the Pro Gay Wrestling Federation is outraged with Michael Cole's lack of the punishment, thought that there should have been a stiffer punishment than, here's the punishment, folks. WWE and TNA preach erase the hate, no bullying, no this, no gay slurs, no homophobic. We're a family program. We're a Christian program if you're TNA. But you have the stereotype black guy holding a knife to somebody's throat. We're a Christian show. Michael Cole will have to attend training seminars on, for lack of better words right now, we'll call it sensitivity. WWE partnered with, I guess, all 3 of these working together. WWE on May 17th of last year partnered with GLAAD for their Erase the Hate and their anti-campaign messages, no bashing, no this, no that. And within that partnership, there are classes that are provided by GLAAD that WWE has informed the WWE Universe and news outlets that Michael Cole has been spoken with. He's removed the post, and he will have to attend these classes. And then, I guess, after he's done the classes, he'll walk out to his car and go, why didn't I just say nothing? I mean, I'm not downplaying it, don't get me wrong. It was insensitive, and especially when you work for a company that you're a commentator who has a character, but WWE likes its characters to be in character when they're on Twitter and Facebook. So maybe you might want to pump some sunshine the next time you're on Twitter, because if you're not cutting a promo, WWE doesn't usually like it. If you're not following through into a developing storyline, like with The Rock and Cena, the back and forth, if you're not aiding to that effect, they usually don't like it when their talent / staff do their own thing, especially on a social networking website that's seen by millions upon millions even before he deleted it. It's the only reason we know about it. Thank God for you people that sit on Twitter or get the random updates, whatever you do. I find it all be a little annoying. I mean, I network and all for business, and I have friends on it, but I can honestly say, yes, I have 200 plus friends, on the Facebook account, but it also accounts for some of the show audience, my business interests, and my friends. But in all honesty, I'm not like the other people that say I have X amount of friends and that establishes me, considering I only talk to about a handful at a time, if at all. Some are just on there to be polite, but I think that works that way for everybody. So, the Gay Wrestling Federation, the Pro Gay Wrestling Federation, is outraged with the punishment handed down that I just described and calls for his termination or suspension or termination. Says that its CEO, whose name I don't have on hand right now, said that Cole's comments were hurtful and degrading, and which they were. I mean, to wrap this up and go into our next one, you can't partner with the gay community. Forgive me for sounding insensitive about this. I know we have a wide variety of interneters and viewers. I'm not even tooting my own horn. Whether you're a viewer to the show or you just watch random stuff or you were just happen to be a casual fan and had Michael Cole as one of your friends to follow him. When you're partnered with the gay community, it might not be a good idea to put sexual orientation negative remarks regarding someone's sexual orientation, if in fact he were, which I don't believe he is, but even if he is, one, you're in the middle of an anti doing this campaign. Two, it's with the, no joke intended here, it's with one of the biggest organizations for the gay community. And it looks good on your resume, but Cole, come on, man. Watch the P's and Q's. I mean, and we all have gay, lesbian friends. We're in a different society, as I said a couple weeks ago when Cena was doing this. We're in a different society. It's more socially acceptable now. But, like I said, when you're basically the voice of the wrestling promotion who calls the action and who is building a character and match and has built a character and a match for WrestleMania, Jerry Lawler versus Michael Cole, this is kind of over the top. I mean, if you ask me, I would, if he were one of my employees, I would be, first of all, I would be dumbfounded that someone could be that stupid. And I'm not trying to always make jokes here. This was literally stupid. I could see it if you were messing around and there was nothing where if it caught back to anybody, it could be blown off. Like, I'm sure there's jokes that go on in the locker room as they travel, etc., etc. But you're partnered with an organization that's going to keep an eye on this because this is why you partnered with them. You want to help, not create, not assist in the creation. You want to see it gone, see it reduced, see that your company helped make a difference so it looks even better on your resume. Just a couple pointers, just saying. TNA wrestler Kurt Angle arrested for driving under the influence. He was found on a median on a highway in North Dakota, and he told the police officer that he hit a snowbank and was just sitting there acting like he didn't do anything wrong. The officer then smelled alcohol in his breath and proceeded to initiate the field sobriety test. I hate to get all technical here, but I don't want anyone calling me back on it. If you want to add to it, that's great, but he failed the field sobriety test, and I think the whole joke was he was found on a median in the middle of the highway after saying that he hit a snowbank, but there was no snow. I think that's what I got out of that. And more or less what happened. As police were talking to him is he admitted that he didn't lose control. While he didn't admit his first statement was a lie, but he said he turned around and said, "I was text messaging. That's why you found me in the middle of the road." But the fact remains he was drunk. But here's where it's kind of splitting hairs. Remember, middle of the now I don't know. I'm not bashing them because we praise them all the time. But over at Smart Wrestling Fan, the podcast from last night, check it out if you haven't already. SmartWrestlingFan.com. North Dakota Highway. Don't know much about North Dakota. We'll be the first to say it. If you guys have snow, maybe I didn't hear everything and only got the gist or whatever. Fully capable of admitting there might be some flaws, but I don't think so. I got the gist of this. North Dakota Highway. End of March, not saying that there isn't still snow in some places. And now the cops are saying that when they found him, they can't charge him with DUI because when they found him, he was just sitting in the car. It's more or less along the lines of your husband or boyfriend can beat you, but if he doesn't leave a mark, the cops can't do anything. It doesn't mean that he doesn't beat you. It just means that he doesn't leave any evidence. But getting back to my initial point, North Dakota Highway, cops find him on immediate and say that they can't charge him with DUI because the car was not running when they found him. He was sitting in the driver's seat with the car off on the median. Now here's why I think I called it splitting hairs, but I really think it's legitimately retarded, just to add to the list of retarded things. And no, I did not put these in order of things I can make fun of. It just happened to work out like that. The news, there's a lot of good news, guys. We're not even part of the way done. This is going to be at least a half an hour just in news. And it also works to build up to the topic, which I'll highlight in a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, because, again, I'm disabled and other people drive for me or I use public transportation. But even with all that, I think that to get onto a median from wherever this car was parked, now it might be a stretch, it had to drive away from its parking spot and onto that highway in North Dakota. Now, with the argument the police are saying, now I understand technicalities, and when they suit you, depending on who you are, it's a good thing, and depending on who you are, it's a bad thing. By not charging DUI along with the failed field sobriety test, you're more or less saying Kurt Angle, they're not saying that he didn't, but they're just saying there is no proof, as they can only go by where and the condition of finding him on the median. But it's more or less saying, Kurt, you're drunk, you failed the field sobriety test, you're sitting on a median in your car, license and registration, there was no issues with it, nothing brought up, so everything obviously went through. License, registration, proof of insurance. So it was verified that everything was Kurt and Kurt was legal. But it's more like saying, okay, Kurt, you're drunk. So because we can only charge you with what we can prove, someone must have drove you to the median, got out after you had gotten where you wanted to be, decided to walk it, and left you to sit in your car, which you would later admit to be texting on the median. Not real bright, but I understand it's about what you can prove. As Denzel said in the great movie Training Day, it's not about what you know, it's about what you can prove. Sadly, like I said a minute ago, that works for some, and then for some, you can't judge. That's all I'm going to say. But to wrap it up, to show you how, and I don't know how because it's not their ratings, it's not their star power, it's not their wrestling. I don't know what it is, but Kurt Angle was released. Well, I know what it is, but I'll get into that in a minute. Or I know what I think it is. But he claimed it was nothing. Kurt Angle got out. Kurt Angle twittered, said that it was more or less nothing and just another roadblock in the road of life, more or less. Not in those exact words, but more or less. And that he would handle it. How do you think it feels to be the guy? And here's another question for you. How do you think it feels to be the guy who's living with a divorce, like literally living with it, like dealing with it outside of work, and then he goes into work and his divorce, his ex-wife's new husband, the kids, his and the new kids with Jeff are at his job. His divorce has become part of his job because it's part of the storyline. And as we discussed a couple videos before and kind of touched on, not the last video, but a couple before that, I don't think this is healthy. A couple of colleagues are saying the Benoit path, which is kind of scary. I really think that TNA shouldn't be exploiting this incident as something that can get them ratings, but more as you wanted to do. If it was a one and done kind of thing, maybe we wouldn't be having this argument, but it's something that they keep going back to. And they keep going back to it because I don't know why, because they think it gets ratings, even though when it first started, the wrestling community and reporting community more or less said that it didn't work for them. I mean, kids at the pay-per-view, kids in the middle of what's supposed to be a believable feud. And then the scarier part is, behind the scenes, you have real-life Kurt Angle who, like I said, has to deal with a failed marriage outside of his job. And then part of his job is to make that failed marriage story entertaining to wrestling fans every night. Now, I know we pick on TNA, and some of you may think we have a prejudice. We just have a prejudice, or I have a prejudice, because I remember what it was. I remember what it set out to be. I remember that it had everything that it needed, even leeway, because McMahon didn't see it as a threat. And now, not because of not knowing about it, but because it makes so little of an impact on Vince's viewership. He knows about it, but he also knows the restraints TNA's in, that it's not, it had a failed Monday Night War attempt. It's on shaky ground anyway. They're pushing the network card. Um, you're just, I don't think, to get back on topic, well, I was the whole time, but I don't think a divorce with kids that are split up, or at least from the story, with kids that are split up and get to see daddy in the stereotypical, on the stereotypical weekends or every other weekend, however it goes. I'm sure TNA will fill in any blanks that they might think peaks the rating. Get past it too and give me a call. And stay there consistently for 4 to 6 weeks after you call me. And then I'll start maybe thinking there's some light for this company and a couple other things, but maybe I'll loop that in later. I just don't think it's safe. I don't think it's entertaining to say, you're more or less saying to the wrestler, hey, we can't do anything with you, but that divorce you just went through, oh man, can you guys recreate the details? The initial hatred that must have been there, is there any way we can dig that back up? Because that might get us a 1.1. And you know what I say, Eric says to Dixie, a 1.1 is better than a 1.0. I'm not even really trying to be funny here. I just don't think it's safe. I don't think it's entertaining to exploit a divorce. I don't think it's entertaining to exploit any aspect of the divorce, as it's, whether you're a wrestler or you're a Fortune 500 CEO, if you have a soul, I have to emphasize because some of the CEOs you begin to wonder, not a soul. If you have a conscience and you know between right and wrong, and you have I guess there's a couple factors. If you have a decent heart, if the marriage wasn't meant to last, you're going to feel bad about it. But then to feel bad about it on a personal level and then have everyone at your job tell you that recreating it, emulating it, and making a story around it could help your career, even if it did, even if we were saying we want more divorce action, I at least have to wonder. I mean, I had somebody kind of tease me this week in work. I love wrestling. I love this business. I don't wrestle. Like I said, I'm a promoter for the state of Pennsylvania, up and coming promotion runner. And I just want to get it right and give as many wrestlers as I can steady jobs or consistent work at least. I think steady jobs is kind of turning yourself into Vince McMahon before it even happens. So steady work, like weekly, weekend, every other weekend, ideally, or monthly, as long as we can make it a good show and make it entertaining for the people in this area and surrounding. I just don't think any of this sells. And it always baffles me when TNA keeps going back to it, because we've been screaming for, and I'm being generous, a month now that we didn't like the kids. We didn't like the whole divorce thing. We didn't like how, basically it was the exploitation of the children and the whole recreation of the storyline just to say this peaked a rating when it really didn't. But moving on from that, sorry. Moving on from that, it's got to affect the guy personally. I know it would me. But I guess we'll wait and see. What I was getting at is, I just hope it doesn't, because we all remember, and I'll touch on it more, but we all remember that when Benoit died, it came out that him and his wife were having some problems that were probably, like I argued in the 3-hour special, that were probably known by at least one other person other than Benoit. But it didn't benefit WWE to intervene. One could argue that to help the man would have likely, and we'll get into this more when we read the fan email, would have likely benched him for a little bit while he got the help that he needed. And I just don't want to see the same happen to Angle. Do I have high hopes for TNA? No, but this isn't a bash on TNA. He just happens to be a professional wrestler working for the TNA company, the TNA brand. So we'll see. Charity news: John Cena works with the Make-A-Wish Foundation to be the 30 times the giver, or 30 times the giving power was the, I believe it was a TMZ reference site. Apparently John Cena this weekend will be taking 30 kids with terminal, I guess it's all the same word, life-threatening diseases, to 30 kids, select kids, to WrestleMania 27 this Sunday. Followed by a pizza party hosted by John Cena. And don't let that side confuse you. I think it's great. I don't know. I sigh because John Cena, like him or hate him, probably did it for those kids. Not knowing, but knowing John Cena. That he remembers what it's, or you hope he still does. He remembers what it's like to be green, just coming up. He knows he's a superstar now, but he doesn't, do a show and then kind of cut off his fans or only pay attention to him when the camera's on him. He seems, like him or hate him, he seems like a decent guy in and out of the ring. There's some promos I don't agree with, but I do like the hustle, loyalty, respect motto. I wish he would go back to that. And I understand this Rock stuff's for Mania hype, and you need it, but we'll get into that argument again in a minute. But you see, or you hear about rather, as we reported in other sites, many other sites before us, pwtorch.com, smartwrestlingfan.com, prowrestling.net, the list goes on, where, yes, you did this good, but what about all the negative stuff you've done? And don't even get me started, because we'll come back to it, because it kind of all will factor in when I read all the fan mail, and we'll have one big discussion about it, because like I said in the 3-hour special, I'm bad with time. We're literally 4 out of 18 news topics in, and it's already a half hour past. So officially now, so I don't screw myself more, I'm not putting a time frame on any of this. Enjoy. Linda Hogan is in a bit of a, speaking of Twitter earlier, in a bit of a Twitter battle herself, finding out that Charlie Sheen rumoredly abuses animals, or speaking against his alleged animal abuse. I don't follow him enough. I don't care if I'm not winning, I'm surviving. Don't get me wrong, it's a catchy slogan, but like I always say, when you look at a celebrity's life and then look at your life, your problems suddenly seem minuscule. You don't believe me? Go check it out. Go have one of the worst days you've ever had, or while you're having the worst day you've ever had, or it's starting to get shitty. Doesn't really matter because it works for all occasions. Whenever you doubt yourself or whatever's going on in your life, check out your local newsstands. Read literally just the headlines on the gossip magazines or the rumor magazines, however you refer to them. It will make your life seem great by comparison. It's a great self-esteem booster. And that's sarcasm and seriousness, but it is. You won't feel so shitty anymore, I promise you. You might actually leave with a smile on your face or find something in that moment to smile about. But she's challenged Charlie Sheen literally. She said in the tweet, more or less, I'd like to get you in the octagon. So it's ex-wife of Hulk Hogan, Linda Hogan, challenging Charlie Sheen to an MMA style cage fight. Uh, hmm. That might be entertaining. Come on. You're thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond to it, actually. But I'm also, on the other side, thinking about you can't say it wouldn't be entertaining. Um, I don't really know how to comment about this because since the divorce and, well, Hogan's been ongoing, but we know what his money problems stem from. He's constantly making payments to Linda or still making payments on a lump sum to Linda. However you look at it, that's why he went back to TNA. It's why he went back to wrestling. The Finding Hulk Hogan A&E documentary show may have only had one or two episodes, but the first episode was rather enlightening, especially for me if you're a visual learner more than you're a uh, reader, and that's how you gain your knowledge. I always like to watch the show versus read it. It doesn't make you any less smart. Your interpretation's different. We all have our own process. Um, what to say? Well, it would get attention because it's Charlie Sheen, and Charlie Sheen has proven that even when he turns what's supposed to be a pilot to an online series or something into a winning campaign where everyone in the room is chanting winning, uh, his pull power is pretty good. So you would get viewers there. Fans of Hulk Hogan would want to see Linda go down. Old school fans. New school might wonder, yeah, your wife divorced you, but why extend yourself this much? See, people misinterpret sometimes, and I'm not saying that it's happened recently. I just want to put it out there. But I'm a fan, like I said, I love this business, so I'm obviously a mark for basically anybody you name that's old school or currently has something going, even if the company doesn't see that they're going. I kind of bring it up or stress my favoritism in either direction, whatever way that may be. But if you think about it, and I know we just got done talking about the Angle divorce, so I'll keep it short and to the point, or as short as I know short. Uh, it could be argued, if you're looking at it from my perspective, of he might have retired doing every other year, every once a year work, twice a year work with WWE like it looked like he was doing. he was coming back for signature events. Rock and Hogan got a good draw. It's argued that that's why Rock went out, because to go out on a match like that, even though a real wrestling fan knows that the last match was where he left Mick Foley of the Rock and Sock Connection standing alone to lose the match, basically, and walked away and went back to do movies. But again, that's a separate video in itself. But it could be argued that Hulk Hogan wouldn't even be in wrestling now. His legacy would still be intact if the money he clearly... I've seen enough episodes of Hogan Knows Best and enough to know that the family, when it was a family, it was obvious that it was Hulk Hogan's money, Terry's money, however you want to refer to him when you're talking about stuff like this. But it was evidently clear that Hogan had worked for the business had paid him well, and he was surrounded by things that were a result of the business that he dedicated his life to. Outside of being a superstar, I mean, the superstar part helps. Don't get me wrong. Being a wrestling god, and that being the mold is great. Like, he's a legend in the word, but I always try and be sympathetic, and it's not the TNA thing. It's not that I have a problem reporting when TNA is bad. I could spend 6 videos in a row if they had 6 weeks in a row where it was all bad TNAs, and just keep stressing the point that this sucks. What else is on? But he might not have come back. He might, if certain things wouldn't have happened, and I know you can't change what already has, but think about this, wrestling fan. If certain things hadn't happened, he would be doing probably a Kevin Nash right now, where he comes out on the big ticket events, uses his name to push the event, and then uses his name and forever lasting pull, because he'll always be Hulk Hogan and the fans will always be the Hulkamaniacs. There's at least one person in every crowd that's marked out for Hogan. So he would have been all right doing an Undertaker deal, or like I said, a Kevin Nash deal, but Undertaker isn't classified as well, he's a legend, but his contract isn't referred to as a legend's contract. He just has been around long enough that every couple of years when they're at the bargaining table, he can call his own shots. And since he has, the bigger thing is he has the streak. Whatever you're not going to give the Undertaker, you're going to give him room, because any way you look at it, you're going to need him until you decide to end it appropriately, where people will be pissed, like we've been talking about lately. But when it does end, yes, people will be mad, but the wrestling fans want it to be something that makes sense and somebody that's worth it. We all agree that it can't be somebody that just showed up on the scene that ends the streak. It's got to be somebody grandfathered in whose character within the story has something to gain by beating the streak, and then Undertaker can call it a life. But getting back to Hulk Hogan, it's the same effect. He could be, I mean, if certain personal tragedy of a divorce wouldn't have happened, he'd be doing one and dones and yearly things, and he could sponsor things. I mean, like he's doing now, but now he's doing it because he needs the money instead of doing something leisurely. You know, like The Undertaker takes his 3 months at a time off, and he comes back and he brings it for what's specified in his contract. And it's not just somebody throwing it together. He takes his recoup time. He knows he's a vital asset. He's been there for over 20 years, about 20 years, over 20 years. Um, so he knows how to work it, but the same could go for Hogan because Hogan was just as big. And I wouldn't be saying this if I thought the divorce occurred because both parties just fell out of love and couldn't reconnect. But as sad as it seems like, well, now the average is more than 50% of marriages end in divorce, um, which kind of, isn't a good number. I mean, my family, your family had problems, but the important thing was Daddy came home and the family stayed together and dinner got made. And no, not everybody liked everybody all the time, but it was family and there was a certain way of doing things. And this free to get married, free to get divorced run, I titled it, more or less says marry whoever you want and divorce whenever you want. Without thinking, any way you look at it, you'll still get half. And that's what this was, in my opinion. I mean, just reading what I've read, watching the news reports, watching his documentary, etc., etc. She liked the life, but she wanted a younger husband, or not even a husband at that point. She wanted boy toys. She didn't want to be the stay-at-home wife or mom when Brooke was still living there before Brooke got her own place, etc., etc. And I know you can't change it, but in most of the cases, if they're little kids, they don't remember, and if they're teenagers, they pick a side. I remember a friend in high school who, I won't mention his name, but told me it kind of had divorced parents kind of had its perks because they both still loved you, and each of them was trying to outdo the other when it came to gifts or anything of a reward. It would always be a game of one up. So he would always say it was a pretty sweet deal because all you had to do was be there, and it happened by default. It wasn't even something you had to ask for or make known that you wanted to happen. It just happened. So to sum it up, I think she was a gold digger. I think she had the world by the balls. I mean, if it was all a love thing, then you wouldn't see her out with men in their 20s, my age, when she should be a committed married woman, and all of this should have been out of her system. Or, I know it sounds naive, don't string somebody along. Don't sit there and take a TV deal and make it look like you have a perfect family when really you don't want the perfect family. You're not happy for whatever reason, and this goes for anybody, for whatever reason. But just because and this is where I think I'll get a lot of female response, and maybe, well, just fans that are going through a divorce or been through a divorce, of my argument with her is when Hulk Hogan met her, it was at a wrestling event. She was with Hulk for the success. Don't get me wrong, because Hulk Hogan was just starting out, and they had just met, and everything was growing, but nobody knew to what extent. My argument is just because over those years of marriage, and women are going to hate me, but I'll try and level this one out. Over those years of marriage, Hulk Hogan went out and sold the name Hulk Hogan. Terry went out and sold his character. Yeah, she was the wrestler's wife who probably attended more shows than she wanted to attend. Did deals that provided money but maybe didn't want to do in the beginning. But when you more or less, my argument with it is, I don't know, she should have gotten whatever the marriage was worth when they met, times it by two, or come up with a reasonable number. That's all right. That's a better argument. Come up with a reasonable number. Don't say I've been with you and now I'm in. Now I don't want to be with you, so now I'm entitled to half. Because my argument here is she was fine with the aspiring wrestler when he was just starting out, and they didn't have the houses or the cars or the money. So it was obviously good then. I guess my question is, you know, you go into a marriage for love, and it seems like lately you walk out with a check like it's a goddamn bank, and it kind of annoys me, especially in instances like that where it wasn't the love ran out or people stopped trying or one side stopped trying. It was, well, one side stopped trying because one side didn't want to try anymore. One side decided that what else is out there is more enticing than what I have here now and what I've built. That's what baffles me. The years dedicated and what I built means nothing. Give me my cut and I'm going to go start a new life. And that's all, but maybe I'll come back to it, but I don't want to create any problems. That's all I'm saying, more or less on that one, is Charlie Sheen, Linda Hogan. I think it would sell tickets. Do we necessarily want to see it? No. I think it would give her, here's how I look at that. I think it would be fun to watch, it would be entertaining, but it would also give her attention by default. And the way she handled it and the outcome, what you see of her now, what she is trying to be, just doesn't work. And it would, a match, an MMA style match, just speaking in theory that it were true, that it happened, I say kick Sheen's ass for beating up an animal. I like animals more than I like humans sometimes. But it would by default give her attention, and then somebody would get this crazy idea that she could produce ratings, and it would probably end up on Spike right after Impact. And I just have a bad feeling. The whole thing seems wrong. Just the principle behind it. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but if you don't like each other, you don't like each other. Get divorced. Come up with a realistic figure of your expenses. If we're gonna go that route, come up with one sum that's gonna take you out of the marriage, a percentage of the total, not half of the total. And I guess, and maybe it's wishful thinking, I guess, don't use it like a lottery ticket. It's like she sat there, vested all the money, waited for the money to build, spent some of the money, waited for more money to build, got him the TV show, agreed to work the TV show for a percentage, I bet. Uh, and then say, okay, on top of the paydays I've already received as your wife, I'm taking half of your total income as a parting gift. Maybe it's just the guy thing, but it's not my way of saying, hey, let's end this fairly and amicably. But again, that's just me. Uh, Twitter has suspended Dixie Carter's account, I believe, over the weekend after. Now, I'll probably get some comments on this because I was a little confused about it. But they suspended her account because she posted a picture that said more or less verified by Twitter that the account was Dixie Carter's and the emblem or design more or less insinuated and said verified by Twitter. Twitter turned around and suspended the account, saying that only Twitter is authorized to verify an account or determine, not the same thing, or determine whether or not an account is the real deal. That's Twitter's job, not for Dixie Carter to announce. Kind of trivial to suspend somebody's account over, but hey. And one second. And we're back. Sorry about that interruption. And to just close on that, they suspended her account for basically Dixie Carter. And this is another, again, I did not list these from dumbest to incredibly retarded. It's just how the news came out for me in research. But this is kind of like one of them duh things again. That's like putting the PayPal verified logo up when the money isn't going to a verified account. Kind of like if you were doing one of them email scams or something, you'd put, or as I've gotten in scams, emails that are made to look like they're from PayPal, but they're really not. It's kind of like, duh. My only question on this is, whoever, whether it's her or a lackey that does it, whoever registers the company and or her name to things, any website, whatever, exposure or whatever, don't they read the fine print? I believe it's under the section, don't do dumb shit. I mean, Twitter did what Twitter had to do, but it also, on both accounts, Dixie's and Twitter's, it's kind of frivolous. I mean, not defending it, but the only logical reason I can think of someone doing that and running the risk of having their account suspended is, which happens all too much, there's someone out there using the Dixie Carter name as pretending to be Dixie Carter, but not Dixie Carter, or the Dixie Carter name was not available, which happens too. Which kind of raises another question of, who is it? Like, stick to that theory that there's a logical explanation for this, because right now it's being reported that she just did it, got her account suspended, and more or less didn't know that she wasn't allowed to do that. But doesn't she have people that's like her walking into a conference room and just signing every document that someone hands her without reading it? Don't you have someone that will take the time and read the fine print, and especially look at because every website, every online community has them, the dumb stuff that could get you tossed for no real reason in a sense, but is part of their rules, so you follow. Just one of them does. But moving on, WWE has recently released wrestler Finlay over a recent incident at a house show. No details yet, but I'm working on it. And WWE reports that Sin Cara will debut the Raw following WrestleMania 27. Rock Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says in a recent interview that he could wrestle again as soon as WrestleMania, as the rumors have gone, but he's officially put out there that after saying what he said, he's more or less opening the door that if he goes back on it, he's already told you that he's going to, so it should be old news. And we'll discuss The Rock and him coming back to wrestling. We'll run a scenario in a few, but let's knock this stuff out. TNA Impact off the air in Australia. Apparently, the network Fox 8, which carried the program in Australia, did not renew the contract. No real details. All we can assume is obviously every company that has TV time on networks wants to see it renewed, but it's not like the WGN thing of last week or the week before, where you kind of got a reason to why. It's just being reported that it's off the air and that Fox 8 did not wish to renew the contract. So the guessing game can begin. Moving on. Just something I seen in Impact that kind of annoyed me. Abyss returned after being murdered, and there was no follow-up. But I'm not surprised. It's TNA. WWE draft news. It's rumored that the draft will occur. It's unconfirmed, rather. But we have reports that the draft will occur April 18th, 2011. There's rumored in the reporting community, and we'll elaborate in a little bit, but there's rumored releases pending of Kofi Kingston and Tyson Kidd. Awesome Kong, who's been contracted with WWE since late December, is rumored to debut. I don't know if this might have been a joke. I'm not trying to start anything here, but it's rumored that she may also debut with Sin Cara the Raw following WrestleMania 27, which is this coming Monday. But I guess we'll find out if it's a joke or not. And WWE looks to expand its ownership and revenue for the first quarter of 2011 in copyrights, as it's taken ownership of words and phrases like bigger, badder, better, childproof, Tyson Kidd, and a few more words that they haven't used that either they're getting ready to use or they want to be able to use and then make money off it if someone else does it. Uh, this kind of just didn't make sense. But as we report in the conference calls, I guess I'd do the same thing if my company was based on more than just our live events and promotions. As we've said in the conference call and every rant that I go on with Vince, I argue that the live events, they care, but in a sense, do they really care? Because there's 5 or 6 other areas of the business that always generate money, and when they generate money, it's substantial money. So, like I was saying in the fourth quarter reports for 2010 a couple months ago, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, is more or less they can let live attendance slide and all that slide, especially when you see things like this when they're basically they take ownership of whatever they can. Um, and whenever it's used, they see dividends for it. So we'll see what happens here. Now on to your Raw, the news for Monday night's Raw, or the news that came out of Raw, I should say. Most interesting. Jersey Shore star and WrestleMania guest Snooki performed a promo at a bar, but here's the catch. She appeared to be drunk in the promo, and it was later reported that she arrived to the location to shoot the promo 3 hours late. She was already intoxicated, and then went at the bar, drank more, including during the promo, or the I don't know, for lack of better words, I'll call it candid camera, behind the scenes footage. And Trish Stratus, it's rumored, well, it's said that she really didn't know what to do because Snooki was hammered. So she kind of just went with the flow. It kind of leads me to believe that maybe what happened Monday night in Snooki's segment, uh, some of it may or may not have been on the spot, and some of it may have been scripted. But if she's as hammered as was rumored to be, I don't think you were reading a script. I think you were just rolling your camera, because you gotta figure they were, what, a commercial break or two before the main event, before this segment. So once they were live and once the camera was on, you couldn't say, oh, we'll come back to it, because Snooki was already supposed to be ready. And, wrestlers bitch, I know from the independent, well, a little bit, not as much as you would think, from the independent scene and stuff. This is why promoters, well, not even independent, any wrestling promotion wants you there slightly early so they can evaluate you, they can run through whatever they got you doing, and you don't have to improv it. This is the whole point of writers. Like, Snooki's not a wrestler, so right now she's doing good, don't get me wrong, but the writers are writing the material, writing where she fits in, and then she just goes up and either nails it or doesn't nail it, depending on her physical condition. And I don't know. I was telling my brother-in-law the other night, Monday night before Raw, actually. Uh, I get why WWE is doing it, sort of, and I'll go into it detail in a second here. But more or less, if you remember that preliminary card, we'll call it, for WrestleMania, where we announced some of the matches, Snooki's in a match where she literally beat out an actual female wrestler for the spot and didn't even really beat her. She kind of just got bumped into it because of who she was. And because WWE, just like TNA, I guess just like any promotion would try to do, figured, oh, well, kids and teens watch Jersey Shore, so if Snooki's on Raw and Snooki's at WrestleMania, maybe Snooki's following and the Jersey Shore following after they watch reruns of the Jersey Shore, they can come over and watch Raw. But if I had to watch the situation for any more than 10 seconds, I think I would watch TNA just to stop the pain. But onward and upward. So more or less, to get to my point, because I kind of left that open-ended. To wrap it up, I mean, great user star power, but, and I can't really rant about this because this is the first time, like, it's known that she's a drinker, that she can hold her own and all that, but when, the same thing with the Cole thing, it kind of all ties in. When when your wrestling company's trying to give off this image of a well-oiled machine and everything has its place, the alcoholic and or the drunk don't really fit in. Um, so I guess some advice to WWE is, considering what you saw this past Monday, when she comes into your building, make sure she's the same way when she came in as when she comes out for the event. Or else this is going to be an ongoing problem. Just a hint. Not saying that you'll take it. Just saying that, like I said earlier, a minute ago, she's known for for being a drinker who can hold her own. She's known for partying. She's known for being flirtatious, sexy, all those things that you can market except the drunk part. I mean, when you're funny and drunk, it's one thing. But when you're snooky and drunk, I just don't. I don't. Like I said, it aggravates me that she actually beat out an actual wrestler. She'll be gone after WrestleMania. WWE will realize that not as much as the following as they wanted, as they were hoping for, followed over. You know, all of the apply in this scenario less than a week away from Mania, because you can't blame him for trying this close. Let's see if we can get Snooki in here to see if we can get some of the audience to buy the pay-per-view to see Snooki. So, I'm not saying it's not a good plan. I'm just saying I think it's safe to go out on a limb and say those who are wrestling fans are wrestling fans. Those who are Jersey Shore fans are Jersey Shore fans. Um, there's a little spillover, but not as big as both WWE and TNA have tried to go after. I think that they think like half or better of this audience bleeds over, and that's just not the case. You're a wrestling fan or who watches other shows, or you're not and you just watch your other shows. If you trip over a wrestling event on TV, that's exactly what happened. You accidentally stumbled on it. You're not like the average wrestling fan who goes looking for it at its specific day and time. So on top of that, no real ability, just brought in for star power. That bothers me. And to top it off, she beats out an actual wrestler just because they're worried about buy rates and ratings and buy rates, however you want to look at it. But now we'll get into our fan email. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, Leonard Reed wrote into the show a couple days ago, and we will read his email. And it says, I enjoy you hosting WrestleTalkShow. I find it funny and informative. I had given up on wrestling during the quote attitude era, end quote, and attitude never really seemed a healthy thing to push to young kids back then. Even your supposed quote greatest heroes back back then was a middle finger pointer, beer drinker, and some guy named Rock who used to say candy ass, quote candy ass, which I didn't think was necessary or conductive to the well-being of young children. NWA was also negative. It began the era of cowardly group attacks and cliques. So I listened to various YouTube shows about wrestling. You asked for feedback, so here it is. And he touches a couple different subjects. And as we read each one, I'll answer it so I don't get off topic. And so it fills the show. I'm not going to lie to you. Not that we didn't have a show, but this was basically the meat of the show. First and foremost, he brings up Chris Benoit. You cannot understand why he is not a viable candidate to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. You seem honestly perplexed on this matter. There is a rather large segment of society who believe that human life far outweighs smashing people with steel chairs in the final analysis. He took away two other people's chance to accomplish great things with their lives. One, who knows what his son or wife could have gone on to become. If his job was too stressful, he had the option to walk away and pursue another career, like a man. Point two, people lose businesses, homes, jobs every day. Killing is not the answer, especially other innocent people. Third point, he was still under contract to WWE, so this last act unfortunately is part of his career and outweighs receiving a title and participating in matches no matter how great. Well, Leonard, you bring up a good, I'd be ignorant to say that you don't make a good point because you do. But, and maybe this will start to sound like a broken record. I hope it doesn't, because we're putting our information together now. I'm going to talk to the Wrestling Geniuses, youtube.com/Wrestling Geniuses, about doing a segment show where we co-host like we've been promoting for the last couple weeks, but we're actually putting that into work. Each side is doing their research and we'll bring you the finished product or updates as they happen. To go on to his first point, first, thank you for the feedback. As I've said, it provides content for the show, and I do read them. And as I am right now, I will answer as many as I can in the following show following your email or message, however you choose to send your feedback. I don't disagree with you. Like I said in the 3-hour special, Leonard, I don't respect him as a man, but with what you just said, he had an option to walk away, but real buts can justify it, and by no means is that what I'm trying to do here. But what I said in the 3-hour special a week and a half ago was WWE seen the negative coming. They let him fail drug tests to keep him on top and to keep him in the company and to keep him on TV. They used their own wellness policy to suit them. And as I mentioned a week and a half ago, the top players, they found reasons to keep them while still taking the lower level guys who were still growing, and their violations were, I hate to use the the phrase punishable by death. They're either back in developmental or they're no longer with the company. But they more or less said to Chris Benoit, knowing what they knew, all right, this drug test never happened. You're hot right now, and we're not in a position to let you go get better. I believe I said it in the video. My thing would have been, or you can use the Jeff Hardy one if I haven't said it directly about Benoit. But as soon as they got the drug test, whether it be policy or just McMahon's whim or one of his staff members higher up whim, you don't reward the man by saying, this failed drug test is fine. You're hot, so nothing is going to come of this. One, it does nothing for the enforcement of the wellness policy, which I think we already know. Two, it doesn't show the wrestler that he has a problem because, like all drugs, he probably thought he had it under control and thought the amount he was taking, and like we commented before, the amount they found in his bloodstream after death was at least, if not more, 50 times the amount than what should have been in there. Um, his basically was basic. His body was basically mainlining steroids because he was taking them constantly, and three separate instances where WWE could have stepped in and said, even if, I mean, this isn't good business, but even if you catch it late, okay, we let this slide once. We have a moneymaker, but we also, the guys in the back, I mean, especially for the guys in the back, like we commented last week, Chris Benoit had to do something to compensate for his size. He chose steroids to be in this business, which I don't think is fair, but one could also argue that the mold's been set by Vince, because if you're not big and muscular, then the little guy rarely, unless your last name's Mysterio, gets out of the gate. And it's a mindset that has been embedded in all these wrestlers. I mean, look at Triple H. Look at it, a handful of them. Masters was suspended for wellness violations for using steroids. He's still toned, but you can see his muscle mass went down. There's a way to look good without looking like we tease Triple H about, the action figure in real life. There's a way to do it. And my only argument with your points is he could have walked away, but he was also presented each time with more, like I said, more or less, this is no big deal. You're a wrestling star. We're not in a position to get rid of you because of this, even though it merits it. So try not to do it again. And then when you see that they let him fail 2 other tests, and then before I guess they could test him again, the tragedy happened. But that's my argument. His company, who should have looked out for him considering the work he does and the demands they have for fit wrestlers, in the first, even if you don't make it public or let the locker room know, take it from his first failed drug test and keep an eye on the guy. It's more or less like they let him fail these drug tests. They let him do what he wanted, more or less. They made him world champion. He was the poster child for the company at the time, the Rabid Wolverine. He was a hit. There was no denying it, but they more or less, instead of handing him help like you'd expect from a friend or people that deeply care for their workers, and use that term loosely, you'd expect them to say, even if they let him slide on the one, Chris, we're gonna let you slide, but by no means is this a pass. And if you fail again, even if it hurts business more if you're not around or not in good health. We're gonna have to suspend you until you clean up. But instead, they gave him 3 different instances where he just went in, took a drug test, went out, and was still contracted, still expected to be at that night's show. This is in theory. I don't know if after every drug test he had a show, but you get the point. I just think that, and to get on my point about the Hall of Fame a little more, even though that was part of the argument, the other part is I'm asking for the wrestling ability to be recognized, not, I mean, the person by default, but when they praise Hulk Hogan, they praise Hulk Hogan. They don't praise Terry Bollea. They praise the character Terry Bollea created. I I just don't, and it's in a memo at our Facebook, facebook.com/CWE Company. It's in a blog in the notes, on the notes tab. Read that one and many, many more, a couple more. I also think that to an extent, I mean, yes, no one is denying, again, don't respect what he did, don't make any sense out of what he did. It was a tragedy, and yes, you're right, 2 lives were taken before they had a chance to really expand, especially his young son. But this is also a man who dedicated 22 plus years to the business. And like I said, I know it would be hard to differentiate, even though I think it's possible, because I think there's a handful of people out there that sort of, I wouldn't say I'm on the fence, but sort of agree with me. What he did, he's an asshole for. Like, I'll even come out that far and say that. Like, he's a disgusting person. Don't get me wrong. It's the coward's way out, whatever adjective you want to use. I concur and fully stand behind you and everyone else that believes it. But I also feel that, and it would be for any wrestler, I would argue this, regardless of the circumstance, that he did something wrong, but he also gave you his life in a sense. I mean, Chris Benoit promoted himself as being a guy who started from the bottom, worked everywhere you can think of, including WCW, and gave his life to the business of professional wrestling, even before he took his life. I know the jokes are, somebody will make a statement, no, he killed himself, that's what he gave his life to. But if you use your head, he gave his life to the business of professional wrestling. And I just think that you can honor the wrestler, since WWE has created it where you've got to love or hate or love to hate a gimmick. All of these guys don't really, a great majority of them don't use their real names, because their real names aren't the ones that are copyrighted. Their real names aren't the ones that are making money. Vince made the money. My argument is, in the end, when it comes to WWE's involvement with your point, is they made money off him. They let him fail drug tests, but they didn't even bother to keep an eye on him. They basically tested him, paid him, and let him go about his business, instead of using the information they were learning with each drug test and at least going as far as to monitor him and make it clear that, yes, again, yes, we let you pass, but you're more or less, you could have even told him this, you're more or less making a mockery of the wellness policy if we keep letting you slide. And then that's when their own agenda comes into play, because you find out why they let it slide. they let it slide again because Benoit was a moneymaker at the time that all this happened. And you're not, it's like your star quarterback. You're not going to bench him to keep him healthy if he completes all his passes. You're going to worry about him being healthy when the injury actually comes. So I think like I said, I 100% agree with your point, but I also feel that WWE made it so he didn't have to get help. He didn't have to more or less do the stereotypical look in the mirror and come down to a certain level, get suspended, and realize that maybe he could do it with less, or dare say none, that he had, after 20 some years, was already established, that there was nothing left to prove. But again, not condoning or trying to justify any of this. I guess he thought differently. I mean, he was already the world champion. And I mean, not everybody's like Triple H, and I mean that in a joking manner, but I guess he thought, in his mind, he was probably giving the best he could give all of the time. And his best was when he was on performance enhancing drugs. So, but yeah, with his kid and everything like that, I couldn't agree with you more. He stripped two lives away, and that's not what I'm arguing, and I understand what human nature is, and I know you didn't intend the email to come out that way, so I'm not taking it that way, but it's also like saying, thanks for making us rich, you're dead, so we're going to forget about you now because of the way you died. Good 22 years, nice to know you. There's no family members left to send paychecks to, so we're just going to write you off because, yes, it was a horrible incident. We're not condoning it. And that's what I think the misconception is with my argument on that, with the fans and people that, critique me, or the fans that comment in, is I'm not asking you to like the person. I'm asking you to respect the vested dedication to the business. I mean, we all know Triple H as the rich snob who had money before he came into wrestling, but that's the argument that I always make to defend Triple H to a degree. I mean, not recently, because he's just lately, because of his tie into the family, he's allowed to do whatever he wants and bury whoever he wants. But I always said that Triple H, it's obvious. I mean, he's snotty now because he's got more power than he ever thought he would probably 10, 20 years ago. But, which I guess happens by default, which is also human nature. But in his defense, I always said Triple H had made millions before he came into wrestling. So he came into wrestling with the desire to be a wrestler and be one of the best over time. And that is what he accomplished. Now, I know you can't really compare the end result, but you're still going to throw tribute to Triple H, and you're not. This is the point I was trying to make, and I'll wrap it up right here with the news. Well, with the fan email, or we'll read a little more of the fan email and then go into the segment. But when you do a tribute video of any sort, if you noticed, unless it's a biography mixed in with, the wrestling career, they're given names so you can throw tribute and promote the character, not necessarily the person. In most cases, dare I say, never the real person behind the character. I mean, just take one of your favorites, if you don't understand the analogy yet, or if I'm not making a valid point yet. Dwayne The Rock Johnson wasn't coming in there to get Dwayne Johnson over. He was coming in there to work his character, The Rock, and get The Rock over. And yes, again, horrible tragedy. All I'm asking for is respect to the dedication that he had. Because whatever he did, yeah, he's a piece of shit, but he was always praised for his dedication. And when you look at any of the other stuff, you can tell he's into it. You can tell he's there to perform. He's there to make sure you're 50 between 30 and $100 seats pay off, and you got to see a show that was worth your investment, whatever that investment, whatever seating arrangement that might have been in. He was there to entertain. And that's all I'm asking. Show tribute to the entertainment. Show tribute to the technical side. Show which he was a master of. Show tribute to the wrestling. Not the man who did the wrestling per se, but the career of wrestling. Not the life and death story of Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit's career as a wrestler. And stop it there. Because as far as Hall of Fame purposes go, even though we know it's, speaking of clicks that you mentioned, we know that you got to be on Vince's good side to get into that. But moving on to your next topic or your next point. Next, he brings up the second discussion point is The Miz. And he says all other Wrestle Talk shows realize that The Miz is not championship material. How can John Cena get hyped about facing someone barely able to contend to Jerry Lawler? You agree with everything The Miz has done? What has he done? You mean promote the gay lifestyle? You mean promote the gay lifestyle? It's okay because it's 2011 and society accepts it? Well, I hate to inform you, but society is sinking fast, and maybe it is because we do not accept more and more wrong things. So The Miz is a great champion to you. Okay, WWE has cheapened the title where nobody apparently wants it anymore. It's worthless. You and various other shows rant about TNA and WWE. The writers are college educated and know exactly what they are doing. Their job is to hijack this once great sport and destroy it. Nothing more than that. Leonard, please write in. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun. Please write in again. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with you. Because here's what I'll say to that last comment. I'm not going to deny that I may have referred to The Miz as a good champion and what he's accomplished. What I meant by that, and this is not backpedaling in any way because the videos are there. It's kind of hard to backpedal when it's all over the internet. What? Congressmen do it all the time. No, I'm kidding. What I meant was the success that he gained because he's part of the. What I meant by that is he's listed under part of the youth movement. A year from now, if you would have even told him he was going to be the champion in a WrestleMania match with John Cena and guest host The Rock, he probably would have called you a liar. Because in the very beginning, if you remember, he was anti-Cena and that was his whole in. He basically he baited Cena until Cena let him prove his point, or Cena had to knock him down a peg in this sport called wrestling. I mean, it's all about storylines, feuds, and resolution. And unless you're Vince Russo, follow through. Which, if you're Vince Russo, you don't believe in. It's all about the swerve. We're back in WCW swerving shit. But that's what I meant. I meant his success as far as WWE. It's kind of like I call it the Brock Lesnar syndrome. I don't know if I've referred to it as that before. I believe once before, a couple of videos ago. But that was the whole success of Brock Lesnar. He got the push from the company. Guys were basically told to lay down for Brock Lesnar and push Brock Lesnar's career. Then, hell, the promo alone, the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. And they painted him as a force to be reckoned with and cleared the path for him to be a title holder. I mean, they handed it to him. And that's all I was saying about The Miz. They established him as part of the youth movement. They hired the young guy, the young upstart, and pushed him within a year or more or so to a level where now he's at WrestleMania defending a WWE championship. That's not bad for a year or more, or within a year. That's not bad. That's commendable. That means that, I mean, like we always say, it factors into a bunch of different things. And if you nitpick each one, you could have, again, your own show just for that. But Mike, especially with WWE, Mike's skills, appearance, and wrestling ability all factor into the predetermined package outlined by WWE. Miz had it all. Miz is cutting decent promos. And I've stood here on videos and denounced the gay lifestyle. I think that, not denounced the gay lifestyle per se, but denounced it as being made fun of, or a form of, or it's degrading, being used as a form of entertainment for us wrestling fans, when all us wrestling fans want to see is wrestling. That's my whole point with I mean, in the end, that's my whole point with all of them, all of the ones that don't make sense. But that's the whole argument, or part of it, with the Kurt Angle storyline. You're basically asking a man to relive his divorce and not commit suicide while he does it. Go into work after losing his family and doing, like I said, the stereotypical every other weekend or every weekend with the kids, and then you're asking him to go into work, face his ex-wife, who I'm sure you'll tell me behind the scenes they're all real good friends, but face his ex-wife on a fire that was just recently put out, no pun intended, but, you know, laugh it up if you want. It's life, it's short. And then go home. I mean, I understand he has a girlfriend and a new baby now, but, and that even makes it worse. You're basically asking him to support his family. He has to be a man and support his family, right? Because you brought up that like a man part. So he's supporting his family. And part of his job is turning what should have been one of the worst days of his life, a humbling event, into an entertainment spectacle by saying, all right, hop on a plane, come to the impact zone, or come wherever we're at within the 50-mile radius that we travel, and we're going to keep running this Jeff Jarrett versus Kurt Angle, and the focus point of the match isn't going to be just them not liking each other as wrestlers. We're going to take real life and turn it into a storyline. As many, since you watch a lot of them, Leonard, many will tell you, Sometimes it works, but depending on the event, most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's not healthy. That's not to say it doesn't work. There's been a couple that I'm sure weren't healthy forms of a way to get a pop, but wound up being successful. But it it just creates problems. And with the Miz, I'll grant you that. What he's done on paper, maybe if I sat here, looked at everything again, refreshed my memory, and wrote down actual accomplishments, maybe it's only 2 or 3. But I was more or less praising how he was listed in the youth initiative. And if you listen to the quarterly call, especially the quarterly call, the fourth quarter call, the fourth quarter earnings review about a month or two ago posted, youtube.com/CWE company. That's what I ranted about then too. Great, The Miz is here, but who else is coming along for the ride? And this is where this whole month of you're just going to throw WrestleMania together, because at the conference call, Vince told shareholders, we already have more or less The Miz in place, and you'll see the rest of them at WrestleMania. And that's brings me back to the first thing I kind of brought up about Raw's ratings and everything like that is 3.3 2 weeks before your Pioneer event, a week before your Streak main event, you bring HBK, who has been knocking on the door figuratively this entire build, which as short as it was, he still could have done it. Don't get me wrong, Monday was great. I just didn't see why we had to wait a month to put it all together. I mean, there's a build, and then there's just, I mean, the week before last Raw was a placeholder, and I want to say the Raw before that, at least, outside of The Rock coming this past Monday and The Rock debuting 4 to 6 weeks ago, everything else was placeholder, and that's, I know I'm not the only one who said it, because I'm like you. I listen to a couple, I'm like you, I listen to a couple other shows myself, and everybody, up until certain things started to happen, was worried about WrestleMania. It's supposed to be your highlight event, your headline event, and it looks like you're casually taking your time and throwing people in or taking people out as you see fit. I mean, that's the whole argument with the Snooki thing. No, it wouldn't be as popular, but the wrestling fan would appreciate an actual wrestler in Snooki's spot. Because, like I reiterated, like I said before, your spillover, you're going to get some anyway. There's no way you can say yes or no to that, so you might as well just assume at least a quarter. Everything else after, maybe even less, but everything after that is either gravy, or it just builds up to your goal of the audience you wanted to take from the Jersey Shore to WrestleMania. And I just don't see it happening. I don't see enough Jersey Shore fans that are into wrestling spilling over and saying, Jersey Shore's over, now let me spend $50 and order WrestleMania because Snooki's on. But wait a minute, if I wait till next week, I can see Snooki free on cable that I already pay for. I think it's a bad practice, just because, and not to sound like a broken record, the spillover isn't going to be that substantial that it'll make or break. She'll get spillover. I mean, they've hyped her for 2.5 weeks, so it'll happen. But largely, largely your buy rates are going to come from your casual to frequent wrestling viewer. Not because this year's WrestleMania stars Snooki. I haven't watched, not me per se, I'm using an example here. I haven't watched any wrestling at all this year, just Jersey Shore. But hey, Snooki's on WrestleMania. Let me needlessly spend $50 in something I don't watch any other day of the year and watch Snooki on pay-per-view, which brings me back to my point a minute ago, or I can just wait until next week and a rerun or another edition of Jersey Shore will be on when she's done. You know, when all this wrestling stuff's over, there's still going to be Jersey Shore. That I just don't think the spillover is that great to throw an actual wrestler out of a wrestling match to bank on the hype of carryover from another show on another network. TNA tried it with their knockoffs, and look how they did. In the beginning, we said it was TNA and the way it was handled, but I think it's because it just wouldn't work. There isn't enough fans on the Jersey Shore side that are going to flip channels once Jersey Shore's over. Yes, every week Jersey Shore fans flip over, but it's not the entire audience. It's not half the audience. I laughed when I said this a minute ago, but I don't even think it's barely a quarter, because your reality TV show fans are exactly that. Reality TV show fans. They're not into the quote fake stuff. They're into MMA, real world, and you guessed it, Jersey Shore. So the Miz thing, the Miz comment that I made, you're not wrong for calling me on it. Thank you for calling me on it. Again, thank you for your email and your input. But I was more just I'm not saying that he's accomplished monumental things. I just think that for once it's great to see WWE, because it used to be, oh, here's our young upstart. You'd see him on a Sunday Night Heat once or twice, maybe once, and then you wouldn't see him again because they always judge things from the first one or two matches instead of what they did with Miz, where obviously there's people that help write the promos. Miz came out and Miz became somebody the fans love to hate, a good heel. And he was part of the youth movement, so that looks even, he's part of the youth initiative, so that looks even better. And just within a year, like I said, that's the only thing I'm praising. He got enough of a push for being a little guy, like he's not super buff and tall like Vince likes, but for being a little guy, he got the Brock Lesnar push, and he's done all right with it. No, I do not agree with the homophobic jokes on Cena's end, or Cena referring to Alex and Miz going back and forth with Cena with the jokes. I said in 2 other videos before this that it needs to stop. As a matter of fact, at the top of this show, it was part of the news. So I agree with you that they can find other outlets to cut their promos and accomplish the result they're trying to go for without bashing on someone's sexual orientation, race, or anything else. So I concur with you there. But actually, in the last, we'll try and round this off at the 2-hour mark here. We got about 8 minutes. And today's topic, actually, to segue right into that, I just looked at my notes. Wrestling homophobic jokes, slurs, and partnerships for appearances' sake is the name of the topic. And what I mean by that is, going back to the top of the show, we heard about WWE's alliance with GLAAD. We heard about Michael Cole's comments and everything else. And to concur with, again, what I've been saying the last two videos, at least, if not better, is whether you're WWE or TNA, how do you run an ad saying erase the hate, and then, like I said at the top of the show, you have the stereotypical black man evangelist who in the storyline is stealing people's money, spending it on strip clubs, dog fighting. We used to call it the Michael Vick thing, but I don't think that's funny or catchy anymore. I just think that, that's a separate video, and I don't think either one compares. But when you're WWE or TNA, and over the last 2 months, bullying, or over the last year rather, I'll broaden it just to be fair, because a lot of it started end of last year, with the suicide over bullying and stuff like that. You're saying erase the hate, but then in your next segment, when you come back on the air, the Pope's going to have a knife to wrestler X's throat in the stereotypical black man, drug dealer, high roller angle that you have him in. So you basically gave him a storyline that's based solely, if not a great majority, on stereotypes and how you feel about them. But after that, stay tuned, because we want to erase the hate again so we can put it back in on our show. And to concur with Leonard again, or like I have been for the last 20 minutes, no, I agree with you 100%. The gay jokes are out of line. The innuendos towards the insults, even if they're innuendos, we're not stupid. That's what an innuendo is. You read into it. It might take a minute, but you read into it and the joke is still implied. Now, as I was saying in the beginning of the show, and what you commented on, is I said we're a socially acceptable society, but I agree with the point you made. You said people accept, but they more or less don't accept wrong things happening again and again. And I couldn't agree more, because they won't. They'll get burnt out and tired of it, like they are. If you notice, Pope isn't really getting any attention. It's just a storyline that it's actually kind of funny, because you think about all the storylines that they've walked away from. One named Samoa Joe, just to name one. And then you see how they're trying to either work this Pope promo or run it out. And when you could this would be a good time to just pull one of your disappearing acts and bring him back in a month. After he's off your TV and it's not beaten into you of the stereotypical black man who wants to do everything in secret, who always has money, who takes donations, but they really go into his pocket. I mean, it would be a good storyline, I think, if worked better and not so stereotypical, but that isn't the point. The point is the jokes, the innuendos, all that stuff that's negative to the business, negative to the fan base, that entertain the business by, going out and working, or getting their parents to buy pay-per-views, or taking them to live events. The kids 14 to, I'll say, ages 5 to 15, just to be generous. You want that hero And when your hero, in the midst of WrestleMania and going after a title, doesn't remember to hype the title, to touch on what you said about them being pointless, I couldn't agree more, but doesn't touch on him being at the time I recorded the video, I believe it was 4 weeks, a month, being a month away from getting a title match and how much he wants the title. No, we skip right past that, but we don't forget to mention how Alex Riley and Miz go shopping together. We forget what could have made that promo better and enforced John Cena, the character, going into WrestleMania. We forget everything that could have been structured around this match. But God forbid if we forget the jokes, the puns, the slurs, and the degrading, basically. So, again, I couldn't agree with you more. Especially when, like I said, both of these companies have partnerships with anti-bullying or the gay community, like GLAAD and all that other stuff, the anti-bullying, the gay communities, etc., etc. And when you do, that's why I called it in the beginning of the show, Michael Cole dumb shit, because I never thought I'd be at a point where rewind an hour and 30 minutes ago, or an hour and 45 minutes ago, and forget everything I said about Michael Cole and kind of the explanation or the discussion point, because it's kind of one of them duh things. It's, well, like I said in the beginning, it's not just WWE watching you when you have partnerships. It's what keeps getting brought up. The Mattel deal with WWE. WWE only has the Mattel deal because WWE is a family-friendly company and their rating is clearly visible. But even though we've been giving them praises about stretching a little bit, that's fine. You can stretch it without really offending anyone and entertaining people, especially when you have a majority that have either flip-flop between wrestling and MMA when it's on, and you can have your edgier storylines, I think. Like I always said, not trying to recreate the Attitude Era, do not want the Attitude Era back just because it was good for its time, not because it's no good. I've explained it in other videos. The wrestlers of that era are what made it. Rock and Austin had their best years professionally. And to get into what you said about them, my so-called, or our so-called heroes, is they were. I mean, not everyone agreed with it. I mean, I'll even go out on a limb and say there were times, since I've been watching since 1999, I'm sorry, since summer of 1998 is when I started watching into 99. Got a little more involved in it, and here we are. But there were times, I won't lie, that I didn't like the Stone Cold promos. Not that they weren't entertaining. I'm sure they were entertaining for the audience it was directed at, but given I don't know if it was my age, because I'm not trying to boast about myself here. I'm literally stuck for an explanation, even though it's right there. But there were times that, all right, here's the best way to put it. There were times that, yes, it entertained me. And then there were other times that, I can miss this. They'll either recap it or it'll come out by the main event. And it usually did. And I would skip the promo and they would just point out the key points. And Why else? There were some I just weren't comfortable with. I'll be the first to say that if it's entertaining, I'm there. If it's if it's like a TNA, and I'm not bashing on them again, but they're the best scenario at the moment. But there are things that when I watch TNA, even though I'm fully aware that this company has no idea what it's doing, that the promos literally feel wrong. Like you're watching it, just take the Pope again. You're watching it a few months after Michael Vick was cleared of everything, and then TNA decides to, oh, that could boost a rating, so we're going to create a wrestler that does exactly that, but has an what's a good word? Has a has almost the same backstory as Michael Vick, but it's covered up by other things that separate him from Michael Vick. Because that was the whole reason I, at least, called it the Michael Vick storyline. Because you called him the Pope. He was a priest, not a football player. So there's your differences that distinguish the two in case, Michael Vick ever got pissed off. If I were Michael Vick, I would have been pissed off this whole run, this whole 8 weeks, if not more. Because if you can't see that this is them taking his incident, putting little things in it to separate it, and then packaging it to the fans who will read under those circumstances to find out more, that they see that it's a Michael Vick storyline. Like, what else can you call it? Or the stereotype storyline. Like, even if it's not the Michael Vick, the black quote unquote drug dealer who conveniently always has a weapon with him is not using his wrestling moves. He's using a fake knife that he pointed out once he got to the top of the ramp. But you're basically building a situation where the Pope's not intimidating his opponent with his wrestling ability or his promo. You're you're working it that he's intimidating because he has a knife. Anyone is intimidating with a weapon in their hand. Well, some, not all, 90%. Uh, so call it what you will, but it all ties into it. I mean, whether we're talking about the homophobic or anything like that, it all kind of umbrellas into one thing that no, I don't think if I had a kid now that I would want them to watch wrestling, to be honest with you. Uh, Maybe not even back in the Bret Hart days. I always thought that was admirable that as it got edgier, Bret, I mean, say what you will, I probably in that time would have argued 2 points. He's got a point, but then I would have followed it with, but he's also the company man, and if he's going to work in the company, he can't be doing interviews that contradict what he's a part of night in, night out. So there I thought he was a little contradictive, but I also thought it was something different because most of your wrestlers always went with the flow. They got their push and nothing got in their way. They did whatever the company said. This was a guy that was coming out and saying, I'm all for wrestling entertainment, but it's not like it was. It's where we're basing it more or less what he was saying without even saying it or before he even knew it, right, really, is he was saying, watch out, it's only going to get worse from here. I mean, just pick it off. You had couple years back, you had Linda McMahon in a comatose state while she watched her husband fondle and make out with one of his storyline, mind you, one of his female wrestlers. You had implications of sex in the locker room. You had Trish Stratus and Stephanie McMahon in a manure match or a mud match where everything was covered in mud, and that generated the sex appeal that at the time, towards the end of the era, WWE thought it needed. Um, just a lot of different things, and I argue this in every video. Like if you put them all together or you watch certain ones, certain points are made on this. I couldn't agree with you more, Leonard. You make great points. Again, please write in again. I enjoy the back and forth. I'm interested to hear what you have to say next. And again, I concur with everything you say. And I'll wrap it up, the show up by saying this, and then we'll get into our plugs. I've been saying for part of the reason of creating the show actually was evaluating the wrestling, letting these promoters know that storytelling isn't rocket science. If you can create a simple story as long as you have the telling part down. And what seems to be lackluster in TNA and WWE at times, depending on the week, is it's less about the wrestling and more about who's there, more about, or was more about, how much cleavage you see. And that's a separate argument in itself, but I'll stand behind the Trish Stratus thing because Trish Stratus, yes, they marketed her for her sexuality, her good looks, her all of the above. But what you got out of it after all that is she dedicated herself to the business and became an attractive female wrestler. Whereas 2 years before Trish Stratus, the females were, there was the women's title. The wrestling was ground based and not really wrestling, more as who gets the better of who in this match and who gets the title. And the female wrestlers were essentially valets. And Trish Stratus, along with Chyna and a couple others, showed that, hey, we can keep our good looks and do your swimsuit every year and all that other stuff that goes with it. But we came here to the World Wrestling Federation, World Wrestling Entertainment, whatever you knew it as or that period as. We also came here not to just be exploited. She kind of said it, so not only are you going to exploit me, but I'm going to be a good wrestler to boot. So it was like the best of both worlds as far as WWE is concerned. And if you ask me, it was the best of both worlds from Trish, because Trish showed, again, I can be sexy, do all the photo shoots you want, do all the appearances you want, market myself like that. But while I'm doing that, I'm also going to create a wrestling career, which was great. And just to get to the point, they need to put the wrestling back in wrestling. I argued this since the conference call, since I told you how Vince markets the product. The word wrestling isn't even brought up. A bunch of other flaws. There's no wrestling writers, just entertainment writers. So they've written for like sitcoms and other things like that. I mean, they might have one or two contributors that were wrestlers or only know the wrestling aspect. But most of these guys like Freddie Prinze and everything like that are fans of the business who have taken their knowledge of entertainment writing and are now trying to apply it to wrestling, where my argument's always been, take these wrestlers you give these multi-million-dollar Legends contracts to and they've done it. They did it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Either way, they have the experience. They've been through storylines and angles and worked on their own and had assistants. Let them write it. Let the wrestlers write wrestling. Let the entertainment writers go back to Seinfeld, Monk, and all the, well, not Monk anymore, but let them go back to creating sitcoms. I truly believe that part of getting it back, and I'm not saying, like I said, get rid of all of it, because you want a little edginess from all spectrums that creates the whole package. But most of the time, as you could say for the eh, before the Attitude and end of Attitude era, was the sexuality aspect of it, and that wasn't what it's about. Women were in there, the World Wrestling Federation, not to wrestle, but to be seen, not heard, not nothing. So if you ask me, the female wrestlers that changed the mold actually did the future a favor, and this is what aggravates me about the current Diva roster, is outside, before Trish even came back, was, alright, they all look good, I'm interested in that, but where's the wrestling ability? I mean, Eve, just as early as a week, 2 weeks ago, shifting your weight is not a wrestling move. It secures a pin, but it should not be what wins your matches. To get into your letter two, I think that was the point I made a minute ago where John Cena didn't hype the belt at all, didn't really hype the match at all until the last minute. If I were him, I would have taken 4 weeks and made sure the fans heard week in and week out, whether, like, because we know that around WrestleMania the brand split doesn't matter, but I would have made it clear that I lost the title. I did some other things. I had that, just a John Cena example. I had to fulfill my promise to Nexus after losing that match, but I'm here to talk about WrestleMania and how I'm going home with the title. None of that was actually spit out like I argued a video and 2 videos ago, if not more. Well, like I said, all of them leading up to WrestleMania. If you want everything to come full circle, I encourage you to watch them. There's at least 4 of them. Just look at the dates and you'll know which ones to watch. The title should have been made a bigger deal in general, whether it's WrestleMania or a gimmick pay-per-view. If you're going to throw a title up, it should mean something. I mean, like I said before, it's pretty sad when Kane, before you gave him that 6-month title run, the most recent one, where he more or less says that he's content and he's right back to where he was. We'll get into that in a second. Before he even got the run, he was content that he would not get another shot outside of the one that he got that lasted a night with Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was content with having a job, and one would argue that he knew his place, and like many of the TNA guys, like, we don't say this much, a lot of the TNA guys know what's wrong, but they also have paychecks that they have to collect. That's like me saying, well, we all do it, but that's like me saying, oh, this company's corrupt or this company's backwards. I'm going to quit with my wife and kids at home. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but this place is too backwards for me and it's not run right. They pay every week, but because it's not run right, or because mismanaged, better word, I don't want to work here. And you're not going to find that, especially now. Like, wrestling, as I'm sure you'll agree, Wrestling has faded only because it's been allowed to fade. It's like I said in the beginning, it's become less about the wrestling and more about what you see on camera. Triple H should not. I don't care. Well, the volcano thing last year was one thing. They were SmackDown guys stuck on Raw, so they had to improvise. But like Pat McNeil said, from a contributor to the PW Torch, these 20-minute promos worked when they had wrestlers that could go the 20 minutes and keep the fans' attention. I mean, and I hate to reference it because it feels like it all happened during the Attitude Era, but go back and look at some of the promos and how you were intrigued or the feeling you got, or at least on my end, when you watch Sunday Night Heat on the fourth week or the night of a pay-per-view, and you had ordered the pay-per-view too. You were watching Sunday Night Heat, and that was part of your ritual because Sunday Night Heat led right into fan access, which led right into 30 minutes after that, the pay-per-view. There were good promos because there were wrestlers, workers, whatever adjective, that could carry a promo for 20 minutes. Lately, I don't know. I'll have to look into it further and evaluate some of the things because I don't like to, I don't make these conclusions off the whim. It's all things I've seen in the 10 plus years, 12 years, well, going on 12, 11 or 12, that I've been watching and reviewing and participating in the wrestling world. Wrestling fans like the whole package. Like I'll say that till the day I die. It might end up being a catchphrase or an annoyance to some of you, but it can all be fact. My point is, without going into great detail, but still making the point, it can all be factored in and still tell a story without making the story all about whatever you brought up recently. That's my only point. You can have sexuality, you can have edginess, you can have suspense, you can put it all into one and still have continuity, still have storytelling, still have resolution, still have feuds, still have appropriate build, and not, oh, it's the last Raw before Mania, we might want to take care of this, that, and the other thing. I didn't, like I said in the beginning, I'll come up with a final conclusion after Mania, or if I read before then, but I think it's better to do it after Mania, of, along with the show that has the WrestleMania results and review on it, we'll also have how stories that were only given 4 weeks to mature could have gone longer with a bigger result. Because I think you're going to find with a lot of it, and it's been happening since, it's not just the pay-per-views, it happens all the time, where they come up with an idea and they run with it instead of building up to a moment that no one will expect. I mean, for us to know, I mean, take it for what it's worth, but just say that it comes true. For us to know that Sakara is going to be rumored to debut at this week's Raw, we really, I mean, it's our fault. I got it off the news feed, so I can't really say whose fault it is, but the true wrestling fan, if I didn't cover it, I would have waited just to see, and even covering it, it's still going to be a game of, oh, let's wait and see what they do with this. Because, like they did with the WrestleMania card, where we gave you matches that we thought were breaking, we found out the next week that WWE knew that there was too much press and they had to, more or less what I called it, just to sum it up, was they gave us something in layman's terms to throw us off the scent. They wanted to try and make WrestleMania as suspenseful and entertaining as possible with no or little preliminary findings whatsoever to make WrestleMania that moment again. And I commend them for trying. But it just doesn't work. And we touched on it before, and I swear this is it, and we're going to wrap up because we're approaching 2.5 hours. It just doesn't work. Put the wrestling back in the wrestling. My vote, when WWE, you're marketing for a partner, let them know. Vince was quoted once in a recent promo, not recent, around the time of Bret Hart, when Bret, towards the end of Bret's career, when everything started going attitude and edgy, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was on the scene making a name for himself, is Vince came on. It was just a general, they had a behind the scenes clip in Wrestling with Shadows, by the way, if you haven't seen that, which I hope every wrestling fan who calls himself a wrestling fan, I don't demand much, but if you are a wrestling fan, it's not the holy grail, but it's a great informative piece. Bret Hart, Wrestling with Shadows. And yes, Netflix users, it's available for free. Check it out on Netflix. You can probably find it, if I know the people of the internet, you can probably find it in segments, the whole video in segments on YouTube. Watch that video, get a better understanding, because I always said, like, just to give you a point of why I'm here, I not only love the business for the end result, because the show, the spectacle itself, whatever promotion you're running for, even if it's your own and you're getting ready to have your first show or your routine show, you want to build essentially a name for yourself. So you're going to do things that separate you from what people watch on TV and the norm, that get them to take the venture or get them to turn their TV to another station on a different day or the same night as another program but at a different time, to get them to give your wrestling a shot. And this was my whole argument with TNA. The fan base was there. They were scoring over 3.0s with their product. But they were so small, WWE didn't acknowledge them, let them operate quietly. They were competing with WWE, but see, I'm a firm believer that them mentioning that they knew they were competing and slightly winning at one point gave Eric Bischoff an idea he hasn't been able to shake yet. And I really wish somebody would just walk behind that guy and slap him in the back of the head and go, yo, not like this. This is what destroyed your other company. If you want this outcome to be different, do this. My gist is, and what I said earlier and a couple times throughout the video, is your true wrestling fan wants wrestling entertainment, and it's a package. And without detailing it again, you can accomplish everything you want to see in one package. In the end result, the wrestling fan wants to see the build. In fact, everything that they do would be part of the build anyway. The build to the feud or the build to the match or the build to the feud that eventually leads to a buy rate at a pay-per-view because you've sold it so well. I mean, the possibilities are endless, but the point is you can have it all and still achieve your goal as a wrestling company without having to get rid of the word wrestling and associate yourself with everything but pro wrestling. Just a point, much more on the next episode. For more interactive ways you can follow Wrestle Talk Show, visit WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Visit this video, watch this video and every other 90 plus videos in all. Over 90, sorry guys, it's been a long day. 90 plus videos available at youtube.com/CWE Company. Friend us at both Facebook and Twitter. And no, I haven't violated my terms of service agreement. Both sites are Facebook.com/CWE Company and Twitter.com/CWE Company. Just to give a shout out to all those Twitter fans, I'm more of a Facebook user. It's integrated with basically every other application that I use. So when I post something on there, it connects and uploads like the YouTube videos. When I go into YouTube, anything I upload by default, just by linking them together, the YouTube video posts on my Facebook page, which gets it exposure. But just the point that I frequent my Facebook page more than I frequent my Twitter, as you'll probably see in the last login date on my Twitter account. Not to say that I don't use it, I just don't. I'm a one or the other kind of guy. Like, I don't need multiple. I mean, exposure's nice, but, and will continue to grow in different ways, unique ways, as the months progress. Again, next episode, I know I've been holding out on you guys, but next episode, we'll have more information on the sponsorship program that we're working on. A lot of progress being made with that. We have not forgotten about it. Just a bunch of things happening. Those who didn't like the 3-hour video, I assure you, it started out as me just basically, like I do at every show. I wanted a show that has a setup to it, but isn't tied down by its format. And as you can tell by this video and the other videos, I can go 15 minutes, I can go 11 minutes, or if we have a lot to talk about and debate, like we did tonight after 6 days of not posting, there was enough to create a decent show. There isn't one outside of that one time around the one, I believe it was almost the hour mark, or right at before the 2-hour mark when I went to the bathroom. That was the only hitch. Everything else has been, and believe me, if I had a pause button on here and didn't have to restart the whole video, I just would have paused it. But that was the only flaw. Everything else has been all content. And I want it to be, like I said, there's a format to it. I write everything out, the order I want to go in. Obviously, ratings comes first, news comes second, bits and rumors, and then your topics. So there's obviously a format, but I also want it open-ended, that if we get into a discussion and actually decide to take the time to break it down, that we're not confined like we were. You always heard me in the earlier videos, cursing out YouTube's time restraints, because you'd get on a rant about something or have multiple topics you'd want to address, and you'd need a two-part 15-minute each mini series almost just to accomplish it. Because once you get on a rant, I never like the fact that as soon as you're fired up and have points you can make, your time limit's up. But again, thank you for watching. Send all show-related emails to cwecompany@gmail.com. Special thanks to Mr. Leonard Reed once again. Thank you for your feedback, along with everyone that's mailed in, messaged in. Any way you communicate with us, we thank you. Again, as I always say, you can comment directly and it gets sent right to my email on the YouTube page under whatever video you're watching. Post a comment, like the video, share it with a friend, refer a friend to the site, interact with the online message board, all that and more. Donate to the show as little or as much as you want. Refer a friend if you can't afford to donate financially. The next best thing is word of mouth, or the next best thing is word of mouth and a referral. And until next time, guys, I think we'll do one more show either Thursday or no, wait a minute. Maybe we'll do a show Saturday night going into Sunday, but if not, we'll definitely have your WrestleMania coverage leading into Raw, or right before, no later than like 8 p.m. Monday night, there should be WrestleMania coverage. But until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Sorry again for those who don't like the long videos. We went right down every topic, discussed it, and this is what you got. Hope you like it, guys. Have a great day.